Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Interesting People. As the old adage puts forward, if you're going to do something, you should start with a bang. Not a literal bang, though. We're more interested in the proverbial variety. So, like a bang, but not like a bang, a bang. Now, this episode is very peculiar for a number of reasons, which I will discuss very soon, but because of its peculiarities, I feel it prudent to start near the middle of the story as opposed to the beginning. Let's set the scene. The place, New Orleans, the Big Easy, the home of jazz music, Creole cuisine, and what is quite possibly the best Mardi Gras celebrations in the world. The date, March 19, 1919. If you were in New Orleans on that night, you would have found a city deep in the throes of celebration. Jazz bands across the city were in full swing, people flocked to dance halls and clubs and partied all night long, and this sort of celebratory atmosphere wasn't just limited to venues designated for entertainment. You couldn't walk down the street without hearing the soaring saxophone melody of some jazz band that was playing in one of the many residential parties that were raging through the night. So at this stage, you might be asking yourself, why was the city celebrating? That's a fair question. I mean, the First World War had ended 4 months previously, so you'd imagine that the end of war celebrations had come and gone. This was strictly a New Orleans affair, so in no other city in the state, or indeed the country, was this loud, boisterous celebratory atmosphere so widespread. And there were no events of any significance to the city that were cause for celebration, scheduled or otherwise, that took place on that date. It was a Tuesday night, McConan wasn't around. Why, on a seemingly random night, did the people of New Orleans choose to party with reckless abandon? The answer is actually quite surprising. They were partying with reckless abandon because they were trying not to get murdered. On the 14th of March, the editor of the New Orleans Times-Picayune received a letter which made him stop in his tracks. The letter is postmarked Hell. Really original, asshole. Way to steal from Jack the Ripper, who, for the record, is the Michael Jordan of unidentified serial killers. There's quite a lot of rambling in the letter, so if you'd like to read the entire thing, pause the video now, but I'd like to focus your attention on the highlighted portion of the letter, which reads as follows. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it up on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Now, this could have been one huge hoax. The author of the letter could have been the owner of a struggling music venue or some sort of renegade music promoter. And additionally, threatening letters are not as uncommon as one would imagine, so you wouldn't be remiss to wonder why this one was taken so seriously by the people of New Orleans. The reason it was taken so seriously is because in the 10 months before the receipt of the letter, an unidentified serial killer had begun terrorizing the city of New Orleans and surrounding cities. He would forcibly enter the homes of his victims before brutally attacking its occupants with an axe, which was usually owned by the victims themselves. He would leave the bloody axe behind before leaving his victims for dead. Frightened locals dubbed him the Axeman of New Orleans. It appears as though the Axeman kept his word, because there were no axe murders on March 19, but that didn't spell the end of the Axeman's reign of terror. Between May 1918 and October 1919, 12 people were attacked in their homes, 7 of whom died from their injuries. There were no apparent motives for these seemingly random attacks. Money and jewelry were left untouched, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. For whatever reason, the Axemen liked to target Italian-American grocers who lived in apartments behind or next to their stores. This led investigators to believe that the murders could have been committed by the Mafia, and upon research they uncovered 3 murders in the early 1910s that had all the hallmarks of a standard Axeman attack, but the trail went cold due to a lack of evidence. There are a number of interesting details about these attacks, but one stands out in particular, and it adds to the general mystique surrounding this case. And that detail is how the Axeman actually entered the homes of his victims. In every attack attributed to him, the Axeman used a chisel to remove a panel from the rear door. Here's a photo of one of the doors he modified, if you will, and as you can see, the resulting hole is too small for an average-sized man to squeeze through. However, the victims who survived the attacks have all suggested that the culprit was a large man in dark clothing, So how a large man was able to chisel into and then slip through the door so quietly that most of his victims were sleeping soundly in bed by the time he entered the rooms is anybody's guess. The size of the hole in the door also led investigators and the general public to speculate as to whether the culprit was a man, so naturally they explored other options. They initially theorized that it could have been a woman. At one point they believed that the Axeman was a little person, I believe that's the politically correct term, and I kid you not, there was a stage where they said, fuck it, supernatural being, we can't do anything about it, let's move on. The only real suspect the police had at the time was a man called Joseph Momfrey, an alleged figure in organized crime activities in New Orleans. Momfrey was believed to have been responsible for one of the early unofficial Axeman attacks from the 1910s, which resulted in the deaths of an Italian couple named, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Chiambra. Unlike the later murders, however, the Chiambras were shot dead, and not murdered with an axe. Joseph Momfrey was murdered in Los Angeles in December 1920 by the widow of the last official Axeman victim. In conclusion, while we may never know who the Axeman of New Orleans is, one thing is for certain. Jack the Ripper was a much better serial killer. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. We have some great content coming your way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Chiambras. Now to be exact, at 12:15 Earth. And this sort of celebratory atmosphere wasn't just limited to venues designated for entertainment. You couldn't walk down the street without hearing the soaring saxophone melody of some jazz band that was playing in one of the many residential parties. Oh God.